Alright, here is your 4.3 notes. We are going to use isosceles and equilateral triangles, and we're going to learn some theorems with them. So first, there's all kinds of this vocab with isosceles triangles. So an isosceles triangle is a triangle with two congruent sides. So that is going to be our picture. We have two congruent sides. The legs are the two congruent sides. So those are going to be, let me get out a highlighter here, these right here. The vertex angle is formed by the congruent sides. The angle formed, so here's my two congruent sides, so this is going to be my vertex angle. So it's the angle up at the top in this picture. The base is the side of an isosceles triangle that is not congruent. So if these are my two congruent sides again, your base is going to be this. It's not necessarily the bottom. It is on this picture, but it's just the one that's not congruent. Your base angles are going to be the two angles that are adjacent to the base. Remember, your base is, in this picture, is on the bottom, so it's going to be that angle and that angle. So there's all the vocab. Which side is the base of triangle ABC? Well, and then I have two other types of triangles, or two other names. So we'll just say of the triangle. So remember, the base is the non-congruent side. So the base here is going to be AC. The middle one, we have two congruent sides, so it would be EF. Alright, you write down what you think this base is going to be. HI. If you did that, you got it right. Alright, equilateral triangle is a triangle with three congruent sides. So now instead of just two, now we have three, and that is an equilateral triangle. Alright, now we have some theorems. And they seem like a lot, but we're going to shorten them up, and that's why these pictures are here. So if two sides of a triangle are congruent, then the angles opposite them are congruent. So the angles opposite them are your base angles. So that's your first theorem. If two sides are congruent, then two angles are congruent. If two angles of a triangle are congruent, then the sides opposite them are congruent. This is just the converse of this one. And then we have two more, which is a regular one and a converse again. If a triangle is equilateral, then it is equiangular. Well, equilateral means all sides are congruent. Equiangular means all angles are congruent. And the converse, if it's equiangular, then it is equilateral. And there's our four theorems. So now we're going to use them in some problems. So find the measures of angle R, S, and T. Well, what we are given is that all angles are congruent, or all sides are congruent. So if all sides are congruent, by our theorem, we know that all angles are congruent. So that means that all these angles are the same. Well, if all the angles are the same, I know that they all add up to 180. So we get 60. So all of those angles are 60. So measure of angle R equals 60 degrees. measure of angle S equals 60 degrees, and the measure of angle T equals 60 degrees. So those are my 3 angles. Alright, find the missing value. So I'm going to write down the if-then statement to help us remember that. So if 2 sides are congruent, then 2 angles. So if you're confused of which 2 angles, this is a tick mark. It goes to this angle. This one goes to that one. You can kind of think about it as an arrow. It points to the opposite 2 angles. So your question mark is going to be 70 degrees. If 2 angles are congruent, then 2 sides are congruent. So 2 angles across, angle is across, so it would be 18. If 2 angles are congruent, then 2 sides, so I go across. Notice I'm just having this angle, I go completely across. So now 4x plus 3 equals 15. So my x is going to be 3 when I solve. Alright, the next 2, I want you to see if you guys can do that. See if you can pause it, complete these 2, and then show your teacher your answers and see if you got it right.